Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader here. Welcome back to Jersey First TV and the Nader Narrative. It's been quite a week. An incredible election, historic for sure, but all of the interesting elements of it have really just started. There's so much to talk about, so much that's changing in this country. And the election itself is fascinating in how the actual results came out. And now what is going on? What is going on with the transition? What is next? How is our country changing? What messages did the voters send to all of us in these results? A lot to talk about. So I've got someone really special who's known for his experience in DC, his ability to sort of understand strategic initiatives behind these kind of results, and tell us some fascinating details about what's happening now as we speak in the plans for the next administration. So I want to welcome to the show Barry Jackson. Barry is strategic advisor at Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck. That is a long list of names, Barry, but really you're just this incredibly smart guy who understands DC and has a resume that's incredibly impressive. Barry, thank you for joining me.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me.
When I look at the details of your experience, I would like to sit and read it to everyone, but it's long. So I just want to point out some things because you obviously know what you're talking about. You're a fascinating individual. Before being with Brownstein, most recently serving as Speaker Boehner's first chief of staff from 91 through 2001. So that is after a long history of many administrations, many strategic initiatives, a lot of experiencing and seeing how DC works, inner views of different presidents and their teams. So Barry, with all of that experience, the first thing I want to ask you is, what did you think about Tuesday's result? Were you surprised?
Not surprised, because if you were out there, if you were on the ground, if you were talking to people, you knew what the message was that was coming, and it was just enough. And if there was a surprise, it's more a technical kind of thing, because I think there was there's always a tension in the political apparatus about doing turnout operations, which folks at Jersey First are well aware of.
Yeah.
Do you do that at a party level? Is it paid? All those kind of things, or can it happen organically? And as we got closer to Election Day, realizing the people that the Trump campaign were targeting, and then the people that just didn't show up on anybody's target list, where they were headed, this was going to be an organic turnout. There was not going to be anything that was going to stop people from turning out.
And in fact, it was incredible turnout. Now, I think the Democrats thought that might play in their favor in the different minority groups. They got that wrong. Let's start first with their approach to this election. It's been historic in the ups and downs, and certainly Kamala coming in late to this. What, at the top level, Barry, what did the Democrats get wrong?
Well, I think for 4 years, being the party of the ruling class and the great and the good, they just assumed that they could talk their way through everything. And the simple fact of the matter is, the same thing that occurred at the beginning of the Biden administration was the same thing occurring at the end of the Biden administration. People felt that immigration had gotten out of control, and that they saw direct impacts of that on their lives, both economically, quality of life, crime, but also just the basics of the economy. And I'll give you, Adam Smith, for those who are true conservatives, economic. Adam Smith, when he wrote Wealth of Nations, said it wasn't about how much gold or diamonds or whatever was sitting in the treasury. It was the success of the citizens. And I think the best way to measure that is what hourly earning wages are. And if you look at the 4 years of Trump, those wage increases were 14%. Inflation was only 7.5%. So the average worker felt like he and she were getting ahead. And in the Biden years, even with all this money that was coming out of the federal government and all the changes that occurred, hourly wages increased 20.6%. So people felt they had more jingle jangle in their pocket. That was true.
Yeah.
But inflation, the cost of living, was higher than that. So they're sitting there and thinking, I may be making more money, but it's not buying as much. And it didn't matter how many brilliant people went on TV and the newspaper reporters and the blogs telling us, no, everything's fine. We got the strongest economy ever.
Right.
Real people are like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
At least not for me.
Well, that used to be the way the Democrats connected with people, right? They used to understand, the old Democrat Party used to understand middle America, middle class, the working man and woman, and understand sort of, I feel your pain, right? The Clinton kind of approach. As you sort of suggested, that seems to have flipped. They're now sort of a woke elite group of people who don't seem to connect with the average voter. Trump, which we've always thought, and I'm sure you agree, it's one of these things in life, is how did a billionaire become a populist and connect with those same people? But he did. Now, Barry, he's telling us we're entering the golden age of America. He has very bold plans. I mean, we're talking about plans that no one has really thought about before, or at least disseminated in this way to the public. My first question for you is, based on where we are today with the Senate, we know that's an overwhelming majority. The House, we're getting close on that, I believe. I didn't check before we came on air, but is he going to be able to get his agenda through?
Yeah, and honestly, I want to. One thing you said, it sparked a memory with me. How can this billionaire connect with people the way he did?
Yeah.
I remember in 2016 watching focus groups in New Hampshire of independent voters who did not know what they were going to do. In some groups, they'd be like, well, I'm trying to decide between Hillary Clinton and John Kasich. I'm like, okay, I can see that. Like, yeah, not bad. But then there'd be these focus groups where people would say, I don't know, either Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
What could you possibly? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh, here's what Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump had alike. They didn't know anybody anything.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid to just speak whatever they wanted to speak.
Right.
And both of them at their core was, we just need to blow this up.
Yeah.
And that has never really changed. So to what your question is about how this unfolds, I want to think a couple of things. One is that my friends and colleagues that went into the administration in 2016, I think they, in candor, would tell you they left a lot on the table because there were so many people that were coming in excited, but understanding the rules of the road about government. And that makes me sound like, always use deep state, whatever, but it's just basic law.
Yeah.
The law says before you promulgate a regulation, it has to go through this many hearings.
Right.
That's just law. There's no left, right to that. This time around, you got a lot of men and women who always have believed in the Trump policies, and they know what happened wrong. And it wasn't the policies, it was how they got introduced and all. And I think that's going to make a major difference here. And the other thing where I think at the end of the day, we're going to look back and hopefully we'll see that President Trump really is a transitional figure on the same level as a Ronald Reagan was, is that if he comes out and he focuses his public attention primarily, immigration, getting the economy restarted. He's got a lot of other things he's got to do as president, and he'll be doing them. But messaging and actual activity focused on them, I think he'll have a great start.
Well, it's, if you're watching the process of building his cabinet, and, he's got like 5,000 jobs to fill. Is that right, Barry? Something like that. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and probably more than last time, because you make a good point. I think he got stabbed in the back by what we would call the deep state or career people in DC that he didn't get rid of. And so, you definitely can see that he's learned from that lesson, which I think is exciting to the American people. But yes, the border, Tom Homan's in place now. The border obviously is a priority. The economy, some interesting things that are really changing. I mean, Barry, to say that you get rid of the income tax in favor of tariffs, to say that no tax on Social Security benefits, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. This is not just a promise of a tax break. We're changing the way we live and the way we see our money. Are those things actually possibly happening? Because to the voters, it seems like that's great. Tell me if you can pull it off.
Right. So I'm not going to say that the president-elect might be prone to hyperbole, because if you're on the campaign trail, any of the people listening or watching right now, they've either been at a campaign rally or maybe they were a candidate themselves.
Right.
And you get wound up and you just say stuff sometimes. But like the things you rattled off, no tax on tips, or no tax on Social Security benefit, all those kinds of things. The concept is solid, is the execution.
Yeah.
And so as he moves forward, like I'll give you an example of this on Social Security. Your challenge on is that you want to roll something out that doesn't make it appear that Republicans are falling back into their, oh, well, this is just tax cuts for the rich kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make a real difference on this in quality of life, is instead of you just eliminate income tax on all Social Security benefits, you raise the threshold. Because let's face it, we all know people that are retired, and maybe Social Security pays their monthly fee at their country club.
Right. I understand what you're saying. They don't need the break. Right. I get it. Yeah.
So let's move it up to right. Folks that are at a level where it really will have a immediate impact difference to them. Tip wages are the same kind of thing. You want to make sure that the men and women who are on the front line doing service work mostly, that they get the full benefit of those wages.
Yeah.
The problem is in implementation is words matter. So what happens when somebody who's currently on a salary, who works 60 hours a week, because that's embedded in their salary, their employer and them all of a sudden decide, well, we're going to move you, I'm going to want to go to hourly, and that's more tax benefit on this side, more tax benefit on that side. So you just have to figure all that stuff out. I have zero doubt that he lays it out as a principle. He's going to have a Republican Senate Finance Committee, a Republican Ways and Means Committee. Let the men and women on those two committees go pound out the details on that. And he's always got the ability to say it didn't go far enough, or nope, you hit what I was trying to go. Let's go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the details need to be worked out, and we have a massive deficit, so we have to worry about revenue, and we have to take that into consideration. So we could do a whole show on all of that. The other thing that seems groundbreaking and a massive shift in Washington is to get rid of the Department of Education. Yeah. Now we're talking about billions of dollars. We're talking about something that's been entrenched since Jimmy Carter. Is that really going to happen, and what does that mean for the country?
Yeah. So talking to New Jersey First, folks, you understand, the disproportionate impact that the Department of Education has on pre-K through 12.
Right.
And yet none of the money is coming from the federal government. All the rules and regs are coming from the federal government. Most of the money that goes through the Department of Education is towards higher education. Mm. So the balance here is that, do I think you can eliminate the Department of Education? I think if that's what comes out of the gate first, I think you'll fail, because I think it's not something that was really campaigned on a lot. And if you're, I've been through this battle, during the Newt years, during the Bush years. Boehner faced it when he was Speaker. If you have not educated the public about what you mean by eliminating the Department of Education, a lot of folks, they heard, what? He wants to eliminate education? No, the bureaucracy.
Right.
Like, oh, what? Yeah.
Well, I've already seen that on social media. It's taken on a life of its own, and I think you're right. It's a mistake to focus on that in the first few days, because you're right, that's already been sort of memed into, oh, no more educate. But of course, we know it is about, again, to overuse the deep state word, but entrenched bureaucracy in DC that's costing us a lot, and maybe not providing. We are set up as states first. I mean, that's who we are as a republic. And states have their Department of Education. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, this is where you start to tank. But he's been releasing a series of videos on his different policy positions, which have been fascinating. Now, I want to shift for a moment, because one of the stories from the election, and we're coming to you from Jersey, we got to talk about the blue states. We know that he swept the blue wall. We know that there was obviously a massive change from 2020, but New Jersey and Virginia, but let's talk about New Jersey, tells a story. He came within 5 points in New Jersey, a state that has more registered independents, more registered Democrats than registered Republicans. I'll tell you, it's a state, you know this, that we have been told we're very progressive, but when I look around at my neighbors, I don't see that. What's happening in a state like New Jersey, and what does it mean for the future?
Well, I'll tell you. So New Jersey, all y'all that are listening to this are well aware, you go through this cycle every 4 years. You're the canary in the coal mine, just like Virginia. And, I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but it can be done because you watch Chris Christie do it.
Right.
You also know that you've got men and women that serving in the House, the U.S. House, that represents areas that are kind of tough. I mean, I look like a guy like Chris Smith, who I have known since I came to DC, which he probably wouldn't want me to say because of how long he's been.
We know he's been there a long time, so we'll just assume, Barry.
But, he fits his district. Yeah. He spends a lot of time focusing on it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say he's 100% reliable Republican vote, but on things that are not a matter of principle to him, he's like a help the team kind of guy. So I say all of that because the lead up, the Jersey First crowd and the Republicans out there have to make sure that they're working for men and women who are going to fit the district and stay true to the issue sets that the voters are watching us on. Yeah. You're at the mercy of the first year of the Trump administration. Right. Are they making progress on immigration? Are they making progress on this economic thing? Because if they are, everybody gets to campaign on, look, we told you this could be done. And if it can be done at the national level, it can certainly be done in Trenton.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, historically, and I think we're breaking historical trends. So I think we have to sort of, allow for there to be a difference here. But historically, when Washington goes blue, New Jersey will go red in the following year, because we're off, not with the presidential, with our gubernatorial. Maybe this year that doesn't happen. If what you said is true, if the Trump administration has a successful first year, if achievements are made, do gubernatorial candidates try to hook themselves to that success, or is New Jersey just not going to embrace that?
No, I don't. Look, and we'll know once, it'll be January, February when the Secretary of State's office gets all the final election data in, where we can really comb through it. But, this, what you said, Elizabeth, at the top about, you saw a shift in the voting patterns in New Jersey. It's just undeniable. Did it go red? No, but it's a heck of a lot more purple than it's been in a long time.
Absolutely.
And the issues are what drove that vote. And so I just think that whoever ends up being the head of the ticket in New Jersey, they will be able to figure out what parts of the Trump agenda they absolutely want to embrace, because they can see the correlation, the benefit to New Jersey citizens. There may be some things that they don't like, which is fine, which is how they say, look, here in New Jersey, we got a certain way that we do things.
Right.
And what's working over, across the border, good for Pennsylvania, may not work for us over here. Yeah. And that's why the way I want to do this might be a little bit different, but our goal is the exact same. Boom.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you navigate this. But a lot will be predicated on that first year of Trump, that the New Jersey party and the candidates and independent operations like Jersey First are able to amplify the things that are working and to say, look, even if a misstep was made, it was a misstep and an attempt to go the right direction.
Got it. So as right now, these decisions are being made as we speak. The transition team actually started working before the election, of course, but now they're in full, just absolutely every day, every hour working on filling these positions. Barry, I had an interesting interview with Katie McFarland, and she painted a far different picture in 2016 of that transition team. And it was one of chaos and confusion and lack of really knowing what they needed to do. What's happening now? We know that he's learned a lot and the people around him. Give us some insight as to what's going on right now.
Yeah, look, the one thing that was just simply brilliant, and in this day and age, and particularly with how open the president could be and what he talks about, that so many people in Washington had no idea the extent of transition planning that was going on, including people, high-ranking people on the Trump campaign who weren't aware of how big this was. And there's a lot of different entities, and I'm not going to get into the heritage thing and all of that, but I'll focus on AFPI, America First Policy Institute. If you look at the men and women who were leads in that and who were the lead staffers, to a person, they were all people that understood that they weren't trying to manage Trump, they were managing on behalf of Trump. And that is a huge distinction. I think in his first administration, he had a lot of people like, oh, I'm going to manage him. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so, these are men and women that dealt with him. Like you have people who served in his cabinet who are like, you know what? I'm going to go work at this think tank to help get things ready because I know he's coming back. And you have staffers who worked in the White House who after 4 years, nobody knew their names. But they went all 4 years, they did their jobs properly, and they made a difference. And they're the men and women right now that are on top of this, making sure that everything's rolling just the way it's supposed to be rolling. I have enormous confidence in the transition right now.
You can feel the difference. And it's interesting because in many ways, AFPI had the opportunity because of the 2020 loss to do the hard work, to shore up the ideas, the policies, the potential people. In some ways, that felt like the transition started after the loss. Like we're going to focus on this now. It already feels different. Do you have any concerns with recent announcements he's made on some of his picks? I mean, only a few are out right now. Anything that stands out for you?
No, I think the fact that he focused, very heavily out of the gate on immigration sends a pretty powerful message to everybody.
Yes, correct.
This is the first thing I told people I was going to do. These are the first men and women I am slotting in. No, and I'm a huge believer that whether you're Speaker of the House or you're President of the United States, you've earned that position. You have the right to put the people around you that you think are best qualified to do the job and best understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish. And as a staff person, my entire career, I've been a staff person. I've never wanted to be an elected official.
Yeah.
I always viewed my role as, and I'm one of only two people in history that's been senior staff to the president, chief of staff to the Speaker of the House.
Wow.
My job was to always be honest with my boss, tell them what I thought, but they make the decision. And if they made a decision that I didn't agree with, if it was such moral import to me, I owed them my resignation. But if it wasn't, if it was just, hey, I would have done it differently. I think you're wrong. I think it's going to be wrong. But my job is I need to go implement this as best I possibly can to get to where you want to go.
Right.
And I think his staffing right now reflects that. It's, if you look from Susie Wiles on down, these are men and women. They're professional. They realize the idiosyncrasies of Donald Trump. They're not going to change him at this point. Their job is to get his vision into reality, not trying to change his vision. So
yeah, and that's a good point. And his supporters don't want him to change, right? They really don't. And, to that end, though, of course, social media, especially X, the opinions are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. Everyone's weighing in. It's fascinating. I haven't seen this before in a presidential election. You've got RFK Jr., and and the Trump administration putting out polls or, weigh in on this policy, weigh in. I mean, people really feel like they have a voice. Now, that's different and that's new for us. It hasn't really happened like that before. Tell me about when it comes to his supporters and the change that happened. What's the biggest demographic shift that you saw? Because clearly there was a demographic shift.
So I think the biggest thing is the Las Vegas focus on what politically we call the low propensity, low information voters, which tend to be mostly a lower economic demographic, mostly men, but not overwhelmingly. But other than that, it covers all. It's every race, it's every geography, and there are people that just feel like something's not working right for me.
Right.
And that shift is huge because that always was just assumed by the Democrats that, oh, well, those are the people that we're, speaking for.
Yeah.
And I think you can, if there was a surprise vote or, we heard in 16, we heard in 20, we heard this time around, is there a silent Trump vote or is there something? And I'll tell you what I think was, and it may be controversial, which I'm okay with that, but it's just my sense is that the DEI thing really made a difference. And it was across every demographic where people were saying, you know what, I don't really care if 2 women or 2 men get married, none of my business, but why does it have to be in my face every day?
Right.
If a kid is going through, an identity crisis, it's a horrible thing. And we need to find ways to help that. But really, why do my girls have to face boys in contact sports? That's just something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And this constant, you're a racist or your grandfather did this, and so you have to pay a price for it. It didn't matter if you were Black, Hispanic, white, whatever, Asian. You're just like, no, that's just not right.
Too much.
And they wouldn't talk, and you didn't see it in focus groups. You didn't see it in polling. People were very sensitive about talking about it because you didn't want to get into fights with your family. You don't want to get in fights with your neighbors. Some people may be concerned about the cancel thing.
Right.
But I think that was a lot of this vote is people were just like, stop it. Just stop it. Get focused on the things you're supposed to be.
I think you're so right.
Our role in the world.
It went too far.
Yep.
And that really, I have so many questions I could ask you, but I promised you I wouldn't go so far long. So I'm going to wrap up with one question, but I'm building on that because clearly they went too far, the Democrats with the DEI and the social issues that became just so extreme. And the American people are not extreme people. We're common sense people across party lines. It's too much for us. And I believe that, as you do, that pushed everybody. But now history says midterms come, and the American society, American electorate has a tendency to come back to the middle again. They have a tendency to swing back. What do you think we're facing in terms of midterms? What does a Trump team need to do for us to hold the majority? Because 2 years is not a lot of time, Barry, in some ways. I think a lot of people would like to see a full 4 years of a real ability to change this country in a positive direction. What are the Dems going to do? Are they going to get this message? Are the midterms going to be different?
Yeah. So I'll go back. What we talked about earlier, Elizabeth, is that you got to put points on the board. People have got to see action is being taken. And even if it's not being successful immediately, that they see he's trying to fix the 2 things that he said immediately out of the box: immigration and education. What we know from already from the reaction of most of the mainstream media, from progressive Democratic kind of activists, they're beside themselves. And this was supposed to be an election about democracy, but democracy works. So I guess we'll find something else for it to be about. I say that because one of the things all of us as activists have a responsibility for, we don't have to pick fights. We don't have to get into fights, but we know where this dialogue and this debate will go, because the media and the left will not be able to have rational, responsive kind of back and forth on what Trump is doing. And it reminds me, because she's right across the border from you all, but there's a great reporter by the name of Selena Zito, who up in Pennsylvania, she was the person back in 2016 who was the first person who kind of framed up Trump. She's like, look, the challenge with the media and the challenge with most of the hand-wringers is that they take Trump literally, not seriously. She's like, don't take him literally. He's a salesman. That's what they do. But take what he does seriously, because that's where I think as we get ready for the midterms, we all have to be conscious of our responsibility to be, whatever our role is, not to be afraid to push back. You don't have to apologize if he says something outrageous or whatever. You're saying,
Yeah.
Trump's going to be Trump. And the American people already passed a judgment on that last Tuesday.
Agreed.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You just need to stay focused on, he did this, this, and this. Yeah. 2 out of the 3 worked. 1 didn't. But guess what? He's trying.
That's right.
That's what he told us he was going to do.
Well, I hope and believe that that's what we'll be seeing in this first year. I would love to have you back, Barry. You have so many stories and so many insights. Once we start to see the administration in full gear here after the inauguration, and start to see some of his first moves, his executive orders, what he prioritizes, it's going to be fascinating. And I would love to have you back to talk to the audience, to parse through this, if you're willing to do that and help us understand what's happening. But you must be really enjoying this completely new and exciting opportunity this country is facing.
100%, Elizabeth. And I'll say this as a close. So, and this is not a throwaway. I love Jersey First. My first jobs in politics, I was a student at the University of Iowa. I got elected county chairman in Johnson County. So I know grassroots. It is in my blood. I've held all these great positions. But the way we win is grassroots.
Amen.
It just is. And I watched as Jersey First has built itself and the impact y'all have been having. And that's why I feel pretty good going into next year. You guys got this. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think the message to everyone watching is that you matter. What you care about matters. We proved that last week. We can prove it again in New Jersey. It's no longer just accept whatever happens. No, whatever you think and what you care about in your family, as long as we work together, we can have an impact. And I think this is our year in New Jersey. It's not going to be easy. The Democrats are already, though, saying things like, we need more balance in government. Oh, gee, really? Yes, we do. So I think they even recognize that this stink, if you will, may follow them into this next cycle. But it's going to be fascinating, Barry. I can promise you this. Jersey First will be working really, really hard to stand up for families and small businesses. It's what we do, and this is our opportunity. So thank you. We will have you back.
Absolutely.
You are fabulous. And I want to say to you, thank you for your service to this country. Your resume speaks of someone who has been committed through the ups and downs to stick with it out of love of country. You have a fascinating background. I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody for being that person.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's always the highest honors to be able to serve your fellow citizens. So thank you. Good luck getting ready for next year.
You got it, Barry. We'll have you back. And to my audience, guys, we'll see you next week.
Bye.